The engines on the little Highland railway were always busy. Baron Starkey's reign as owner had been a great success. Everything was running smoothly. Linden proved to be very popular on the causeway line. Each day, train spotters would watch him pass by, and at the harbour, his passengers always thanked him for a nice journey. His new life on the railway couldn't have been more perfect, though his popularity planted the seeds of arrogance, and before long, his old life was completely forgotten. One day, he was collecting corn flour at the windmill. As the miller loaded his wagon, he sighed. The salty air was very relaxing. I'm sure that the mere sight of me brightens up your day. Of course, it means our flour will be guaranteed to reach the boat, replied the miller's son. After all, you are our only connection to the harbour. Linden smiled. It was nice to get praised. The next morning, there was a huge problem. The turntable in Carlowny Yards had jammed. Baron Starkey had contacted a fitter, but until the turntable was fixed, the engines couldn't be turned around. Luckily I'm facing the correct way, grumbled James Clifford. It doesn't really matter. We can still pull our trains, replied Peggy. When Linden collected his train, he received a nasty shock. With no turntable, he was facing the coaches, which meant he will have to pull the train backwards. He grumbled endlessly, but nothing could be done. Sorry, Linden. We will just have to grin and bear until the turntable's fixed, said his driver. Once the guard blew his whistle, Linden departed. Pulling the train backwards was most uncomfortable. He couldn't see a thing, and imagined how ridiculous he looked. Stopping at the harbour, the passengers came to talk, but he couldn't see them, so sat in silence instead. That afternoon was no different. Stopping at the windmill, he was still backwards. Charlie, the miller's son, came down to see him as usual. What's wrong, Linden? You're the wrong way round, he asked in dismay. This made him more angry. The stupid turntable is not working, he raged. It better be mended tomorrow. That night in the sheds, the engines weren't in their usual positions. Linden couldn't stop thinking about the horrible day he had, and vowed it would never happen again. The next morning, the firelighter came. Once the other engines were steaming, he approached Linden. Excuse me, do you know if the turntable is fixed yet? He asked. The firelighter shook his head. Not yet, I'm afraid. It's still being mended, he told him. He was about to enter Linden's cab, when he suddenly wailed loudly. Oh, I don't feel well, he groaned. The firelighter informed Baron Starkey, so he arranged for a workman to examine him. Peggy found his sudden illness quite suspicious, but it seemed that Linden would be spending the day in the shed. While they waited for a workman, Baron Starkey had to reschedule the timetable. He arranged for Gunther to pull the causeway train so the passengers would make the boat. Unfortunately, he had no choice but to cancel the flour train. The poor miller had lost a day's work, and the bakeries would not get his flour that evening. In the shed, Linden awaited the workman. He noticed that Gunther was still there. "Why aren't you on your way to the windmill?" he gasped in a panic. Gunther seemed amused. "My next scheduled journey is the mine," he told him. Misty overheard. "I wasn't told to shunt your flour on either," she said. Linden was shocked. He now knew that the flour wouldn't make the boat. "I pretended to be sick because I didn't like travelling backwards, and the miller is the one who has suffered due to my selfishness," he stated with great remorse. "I sometimes pull my trains backwards," replied Gunther. "It doesn't matter what direction you're facing, as long as the job's done." This was a rude awakening for Linden. He remembered the time he really was sick on his old railway, and as a result, those who relied on him went elsewhere. "I've become very vain lately, and forgot my true self. I'm the lone wolf, and no broken turntable should stop me," he announced. "If I had hands, I would clap," laughed Misty. That evening he confessed his sins to Baron Starkey. He was cross at first, but pleased that he owned up to his mistake. The next morning, the yardsman informed the crew that the turntable was mended. After finishing his passenger train, Linden stopped at the windmill. "I'm sorry that your customers were that down. I pretended to be sick because I didn't like going backwards," he confessed. Before the miller could reply, Charlie quickly spoke up. "It doesn't matter if you're the wrong way round. You were still able to complete your journey," he reminded. "An engine's main goal is to reach their destination." "I know that now, and I will never let you down again," he promised.